What is going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Willing Gas Startups podcast. We've got Jenny and Maddie from ChampionX. Obviously, you guys are not a startup. Everybody knows what you guys do. But we're here to talk about some of the things that maybe people who haven't been paying attention to ChampionX recently, you guys have been making moves, okay? I've been hearing some things through the grapevine. Some little birdie's been telling me that you guys have like low-key become some of the leaders in some of the new emissions technology. Everybody knows you guys from the chemical space, right? But you're doing some cool stuff in emissions. We happened to meet in Midland. I said, let's get on the podcast. Let's talk about this. So welcome to Houston. Welcome to the studio.
Thanks, Jake. Yeah, we're excited to be here.
Yeah, thank you so much. Excited to be here for sure.
So tell me a little bit about this technology.
Great. So before we dive into the technology, let me give a little intro to kind of our space of emissions, because you're right. You mentioned ChampionX is really well known. ChampionX is known for our chemicals. I like to say we have 4 pillars. We have chemicals, production automation technology, our digital, and then also emissions. So in 2021, ChampionX decided to invest in the emissions space by acquiring Scientific Aviation.
Okay.
And through that, we acquired a company that had a good standing in science from the founder, Dr. Conley. He flew the Aliso Canyon, that is historically the largest leak that we have quantified. And with that, there was a little journey he went on. It was quantifications of planes, went on to drones, and then came to a continuous monitoring, the Sufi, which is our kind of like a household product name now. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. But with that, we also decided we don't want to just offer a widget. We don't want to just offer one technology. We want to offer a suite of solutions because ChampionX, our goal as a company is part of our values is improving lives and working with operators and providing a service. So with emissions, along with all of our other product lines, we wanted to make sure we are providing that service. So you think you want to add anything to that, Maddie?
No, Jenny, I think you kind of hit it on the nose. Yeah.
Great.
So let's talk about really quickly. I have so many questions. There's so many different directions we can go with this. What's y'all's backgrounds? You're both in Midland now. Maddie, what's your background?
My background.
Yeah.
So I have been with ChampionX for about a year and a half.
Okay.
Started in fall of 22. So started out actually kind of on the back end of working with Sufi more primarily, which allowed me to actually get really close with a lot of the operators that were utilizing the technology, and then allowed for me to really understand, the technology myself, understand the emission space, and then work on growing those relationships. It was a big kind of focus on the support aspect, and so that's what I got to do for about a year. And then Jenny kind of talked me into the idea of working on the other side of it to really get to build the relationships with operators from kind of the ground up. So
I had to sell the desert to her just a little bit.
Because you're originally from what, Michigan?
No, I grew up in Colorado.
Colorado.
Close to Michigan.
But we had her, she was here in Houston, and then we pulled her to West Texas,
It's Colorado, Midland, it's all the same thing.
It's all the same.
Yeah, absolutely.
With your eyes closed.
Yes. Yeah. But no, it was a really good transition going from kind of the back end support to really getting in front of people. It's been something I've enjoyed so far.
That sounds awesome. Jenny, what's your background?
Yeah, so my background is not emissions. I joined ChampionX in 2021. Prior to that, if you take me all the way back, I was in the military. I was in the Air Force.
Oh, and we talked about that, yeah.
After the Air Force, I was in land. I did land management for a while. And COVID is when I decided I would take a look at venturing into something else. And after COVID, my husband is also in land. We both decided we would probably not keep all of our eggs in one basket. And I started venturing into other areas and found the position of business development manager for the Permian region. And I focus on just the Permian geomarket of all of our emission suites. And so I took this position, and it's just been a crazy ride ever since. Because even though ChampionX is a big corporation, we're really empowered to focus and act as a startup in a corporate umbrella. So we are essentially the wild kids, I guess, if you would say, in the company. And so it's been really fun to have essentially ChampionX's backing of a large company, but also the speed of just converting things really quickly.
So there's a lot of different technologies in the space. You've got from satellites to flyovers, whether it be, planes, drones, whatever, to things that are on site that are detecting the little sniffer boxes that some people are putting out, all sorts of crazy stuff. What kind of technology are we actually talking about with you guys?
Ooh, good question. So you want me to take that, Maddie?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. So what we like to say is our e-verse, right? So we have an emissions verse, but that's our digital aspect of it. But we say a toolkit. We have everything. We don't have satellites, but we have everything from planes down to our continuous monitoring. And so the way you would want to think about that is if you're an operator, how are you going to cover your assets? And so everyone has a different plan and different reason that they're going to come at their emissions portfolio and how are they evaluating it or how are they monitoring it? And so the goal for us was to be able to create an emissions monitoring plan for them and not just push just one technology on them and say, oh, you need this one, because one isn't really going to get it done.
Yep.
If it was, that would be great, but it's not. You kind of need a suite of solutions. So our planes, we can fly your assets really quickly and get a lot of information really quickly. And so, for instance, like in West Texas or other regions that are really dense or not, we can fly, do a quick flyby, and then give you, say, hey, here's a hot spot, focus on here, and give you more of a plan. And then after that, kind of like a top down, you would go from there. Another thing is our drones. We have drones. We actually have new OGI capability with our drones. It's called the Halo. We just recently added that. And
that sounds fancy.
It's pretty fun. Yeah, it's really great.
Fancy.
And also along with our Aura camera. So we've been doing a lot of new fun things in ChampionX in the last 2 quarters. And so with the new release of our Aura OGI camera, our drone, Halo drone, and then our new version of the Sufi. But those are just the 3, right? So we have the drone, and then after that we have which drone we can quantify and do OGI. And then after that we have our OGI handheld, and then also our aerial OGI helicopter. So we can do helicopter flights and get just optical gas imaging and provide imagery for you, the thermal imaging, and then we can go all the way down to our continuous monitoring. So everything I just mentioned is just going to give you a stamp in time of an imagery or a quantification. So that's why science has brought us to, it'd be really nice to know continuously what's going on, right? So that way, if something happens way out in the middle of the field or whatever, you can kind of manage your assets and not have to be right on top of them.
What's the difference between, so you mentioned drones, you mentioned helicopters, practically the same thing, except one has people, one doesn't. What's the difference from a technology standpoint?
Ooh, that's a good question. So with our helicopter, we have on our helicopter we fly, it's got a gimbal. So it's more about like coverage. What's your goal? So with a helicopter, I can cover about 100 to 125 sites a day. And I'm flying that. And I have a gimbal. It's we also have like a 4K resolution camera on that. So we can give you, we say Hollywood quality imagery and a regular RGB image. And then we also have our Ventus Core, which is amazing quality of OGI. And so we shoot that, but we're doing it fast, right? We're flying, we're circling it, we're flying, we're circling it, and we can cover a lot in a day. And so that, what I'm going to do with that is bring that back. We turn around reports like within 24 hours and sometimes 48 hours. And also I can even call my operator from the air and say, hey, you got a flare out. I mean, it's just really interactive, but you're getting a lot of coverage. Now with the drone, something like OGMP 2.0, that we've seen a lot of customers use it for that case in the sense of quantification. Think more site level, individual sites. So your helicopter, even though you're getting site level analysis, you can cover a bunch in a day. With your drones, you're going to have to account for your drive time, right? Like you're going to have to drive to the next one. But our drone is our most accurate quantification tool. So that's an
So what will be the frequency of flyovers? Is that something?
It depends on the customer.
Okay.
And the goals, right? Like what's your plan? Are you trying to meet regulation by the EPA, which Maddie is definitely my expert that can talk more about that. And I'm talking so much. Maddie, what would you recommend like frequency on your flights?
Yeah. So if we're talking regulation, it's going to be anywhere from quarterly to semi-annually, just depending. You'll have voluntary flights, non-voluntary flights. So, I mean, we see frequencies from monthly all the way down to annually. So it really depends on the customer. But honestly, it's going to be what you see kind of on that first flight, I think. And then that's kind of the frequency you'd want to move to after, just to ensure that, when you're looking at LDAR programs, making sure your sites are functioning. You don't have super leaky sites. If you see something that's continually out, it's like making sure we're staying on top of that. So
And another reason to add to that's a really good point. And to add to that is in the past, it might have been like a negative thing to have all this data. But now having a data log is a positive thing because you can have, and Maddie can add more to this because she dived into our, like I said, our reg of 1,600 pages and ate that apple. But so if we have some customers that fly monthly, and what they're doing is they're essentially just creating a data log of their leaks. So if I go out and I fly and there were no leaks on your site, and then, they go out and say, for instance, I believe, a government agency or whatnot goes out and surveys and identifies you have a leak. Well, you can date it back to that last survey. And so you're really only penalized for that duration versus half a year. So it helps in that way.
So you go from let's just say at the minimum a monthly, or I guess at a maximum monthly frequency on the flyovers, moving towards more like continuous monitoring. Does that go into more of like the LR cameras or the handhelds or?
Good question. So I think what you're totally pointing out, Jake, is really like the thing that everybody kind of sees with it. And what we see with it is you're only like, I can fly it, but then you got to wait 30 more days for me to fly because it's just not really economical for you to fly every week, right? So, but continuous monitoring is economical. Like that's our Sufi, and that's we can currently deploy, this technology. It's a metal oxide sensor, and I can just kind of, if you want, explain how that works. So the way the Sufis work is it's the same science as our planes and our drones, essentially, for how we convert leak rate and plume modeling to triangulate and identify the leaks through various different things. We're doing geotagging, georeferencing, and whenever we're setting up the sites, due to, different algorithms and things, how we set them up around your equipment. Our ultimate goal is we're depending on the atmosphere, and they're out there, and we're taking 5 readings per second. That's averaging into a minute. And those readings are like temperature, humidity, various different things. And then after that 1 minute data is averaged and continues. And then we take a leak rate with our wind because we have a 2D sonic anemometer on location as well. And so we take all these things together and we create you a leak rate every 15 minutes. It can be less, it could be more. And then we also can tailor your alerts to whatever your goals are as well. We can do thresholds custom, or we can set them like if you're trying to achieve the super emitter, just really focus on that. We could set it around 50 kilograms, 80 kilograms per hour, whatever works for you. And then we're waiting on the wind to move. And so the wind, people don't realize it moves a lot, like quite a bit, because we only need it to move a little bit to kind of shift the plume or move the gas around. And so that's what we depend on. And then you get these readings. And what's really neat is with the Sufi, you can dive into your data and you'll see these little, ppm readings from your methane. And that's what you get is your continuous reading.
So then you said, okay, once you have that, so you've detected it, you've quantified it, you said you guys are giving reports to the customers on, is it more like a full-on remediation plan? Like, hey, you've got this, here's how to deal with it, and here's like, I don't know if you're swapping out valves or if you're just like identifying the leaks, and then walk me through that. Like, what is actually given to the customer, and like, what are the next steps once we've actually detected it?
That's a great question. Actually, I'm going to let Maddie answer that because this is actually a wonderful place where Maddie would support us in her previous role.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Jenny. Yeah, so whenever we're talking about data, what we're going to see is it actually comes up on a dashboard, and that's kind of the digital aspect of what we have. So all the technology, we're working to make sure it's all kind of combined into one area. But specifically with Sufi, what's happening is we're gathering all of this data. You're going to see these 15-minute postings for the data we get, and that's going to be your leak rate, ppm, wind data. And then it also works on showing what the plume is, or at least where we're seeing that triangulation for what's happening on site. So, it's over kind of an average of time, and what it's looking at is the background. And if we have this sustained event that we're seeing on site, then we're going to get that database to send you that alert. And so once those operators are alerted, that's kind of where I guess we step in to be showing them what it is that we're thinking that the leak's coming from. So from there, it's kind of on the operator to be able to go out and check that out, make sure that the data.
Well, there's two pieces, yes. And so we have different models where the customer can work with us, and we will partner with them to monitor their data. And then we have some situations where they're kind of very hands-on and they want to dive into their own data. I mean, it's just what works best for them. But essentially, we have a dashboard and they have all this data into a user-friendly interface. And they can work and they can do exports. We have open API. We can push it to theirs. So different ways of receiving it. But in the end, it's your alerts, right?
Yeah,
and so if you want
absolutely.
to, sorry to interrupt you, but keep going there.
No, that's great, Jenny. I think that's a really good point to bring up. But yeah, so, as inside sales or any support on the back end, what we're doing is we're having these sustained conversations with our customers to say, okay, this is what we're seeing on site. We're seeing this kind of repetitive pattern. So what we're going to do is look at the background, see where you want your goals to be set at, and we'll work on kind of lowering those alert thresholds for you. So I mean, we have some operators that it's like biweekly, every week that we're touching base just to make sure that where they're at with their monitoring is where we're going towards their goals too. So it's really just figuring out where they want to be and then finding a good solid place to get that set.
And what motivates their goals are things like the OGMP 2.0, their LDAR programs to meet Quad OA, Quad OB, things like that. So there's different, their greenhouse gas reporting. So there's specific things they're working towards. And so when they come to us and say, hey, we want to get, here's our goal, here's what we have to work towards, then we would make an assessment and then make a recommendation of our suite of technology. And then we would go from there. And then we're kind of always partnering with them to kind of process that data, however much they want us involved. They might be like, we got it, we're good. And then we just step back. But if not, we're really involved. So
are there any common misconceptions about this space?
Ooh,
that's a really good question.
Common misconceptions about this space. I think right now, because of the nature of the new regulation being out, and since 2021, since I've come on, the new proposed regulation has definitely made things not so much. It's just been uncertain, right?
Yeah.
And so everybody's been working really hard, and that's one thing I would like to give a shout out to all the operators on. Everyone I've worked with, having come into this space. You know how it is. Operators don't get the credit they deserve in this. They've been working so hard to mitigate their methane in different ways. And some people have been implementing technologies and plans and trials that are not required by regulation. And some of them have even been focused on things to meet a proposed what if kind of scenario. And so I think the misconception could be that people or the operators don't care. And I don't think that's the case at all. I think I see our customers that we work with, they not only are changing their emissions, they're also changing their cultures. And it's really cool to be a part of that.
I think in the beginning days, I think it was you see a lot of public companies doing it, and there was this big question whether the privates would follow. And having had a lot of conversation with those big private independents since, they are doing as much, if not more, a lot of times when they don't have that pressure from the investor base who's telling them you need to clean these things up. They're just doing it because they feel like they want to do it.
Right.
And they're spending lots and lots of time and lots of capital on making sure that they've completely removed these leaks.
Absolutely. And I guess one thing I'll add to that, they are doing a lot in the space, but something I've recognized is they're putting a lot of manpower towards this too. And it's already... sometimes it's in a space where they don't have the extra manpower to go do these things. And that's where I think with a culture that we have at ChampionX, it's really centered on the support aspect and having the service mind of making sure that we're helping whenever it comes to the manpower.
That's a really good point. I think to your point, the large public companies, right, they do have the resources to jump out there and get ahead of it. And that we've probably seen that kind of pioneering there. And for the smaller privates, it's quite an investment for some. Now, I will say the continuous monitoring is not that large of an investment. It really isn't for some of the things we have to do in operations. However, ChampionX, that's definitely something we saw, and we wanted to make sure and offer that to our customers, right? Hey, you don't have to do it all. We're here to help out in that regard. But to kind of like also add to what you said about privates being very involved in pushing it forward and moving their culture, it has been really cool to hear. Like I can think of a few customers that are private companies, to hear like how the paradigm has changed and how they're seeing emissions almost a little bit like safety, and they're changing their designs, they're changing. And so it's like they're doing a lot of different things, not only to monitor it, but now to even consider how to prevent it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really neat to watch the culture across the board from operations to repair shift.
Absolutely.
What are some of the biggest challenges that operators are facing in the space today, do you think? I mean, you guys you're in the trenches, you're talking to them every day. Like, what's the number one thing that kind of comes out of their mouth? Is it, for a while, I know it was a little bit overwhelming, right? There was all the new regulations. For one, it was understanding the regulations. What are the implications? What does this mean for me? Then there's tons of new technologies that are coming into the space. And so trying to wrap your head around, well, how do I build this emissions tech stack? Like you said, it's not just like a one size fits all thing. You've got to stack a few of these things together to really kind of get a grasp on that. What are you guys saying?
Let me see. So the biggest challenge, I'm trying to think through some things. I think that the complexity of the new regulation has probably been the biggest challenge that I've seen as of lately. I do think we've seen, so for ChampionX, we have been working really hard to make sure all of our technologies are ready to go as soon as we can. Like March 8th, the new proposed reg went to the Federal Register. And so we know May 8th, we can apply for Sufi and all of our technologies. The only thing that currently meets regulation is the drones and our Aura OGI handheld camera. And so we're doing everything we can to make sure that our planes, aerial OGI, as well as our, Sufi are going to meet regulation. So what we can say as a service provider is we know that that's something operators are thinking of. And so we're trying to get ahead of that and ease their minds there. Like, hey, we're going to make sure that the minute, it opens, we're there and we're doing everything we can. We're doing testing to make sure we fit the box, essentially. But because it's new and nobody's done the application process, and it can take 90 days after up to 100.
Like 200.
Yeah, 200. I mean, it's just the unknown, the uncertainty of it. So I think the biggest challenge is getting ready for Quad C, and also understanding all of the regulations. And then, there's a design, there's going to be operational aspect to it. And then just really looking at it holistically, not just emissions monitoring only, but how are they looking at it all? Like evaluate, because when you do Quad C, like you're going to be covering all of your assets. And so, or monitoring all of your assets. So, I think that their big picture is it's a very big picture. Would you agree with that, Maddie?
Yeah, no, Jenny, I think that's a great point. And, something else to maybe add to that is just how they're going to operationalize too, especially with those state implementation plans and the monitoring plans that they have to kind of sort out. It is going to come to, how do we do this? How, because we're going from Quad A, which is kind of that set standard of what's happening in the space now, but Quad B and C, they're really going to kind of force the hand of the operators to get out there a lot more frequently, see more sites. So it's just a lot more as far as boots on the ground, going out there, checking all their sites, frequency of doing all of that. So it's just, how does that kind of fit into their operations? And so I think that's going to be
a great
big
point.
Piece. Yeah.
Operationalizing is probably the biggest thing we've heard, right? And so we, like ChampionX, I think we have over 8,000 Sufis deployed. So we've helped a lot of customers implement these technologies and operationalize them, essentially. I think that when we get new customers and things and we talk to them, we do get a bit of like okay, how do we get this? How do we bring this into our culture? How do we adopt this into our workflow? How do we, so I think that is the biggest piece. Thanks, Maddie. That would probably be, and long term.
One of the challenges that not many people were talking about, I was talking with Endeavor, with Shad Fraser over there, and he was saying that with the LDAR cameras, there's not enough technicians to run and service these things.
Correct.
Which is, for one, that's kind of challenging if the regulation is requiring that or making that the standard. But two, going back to what we said, that means people are putting these, like they're actually doing work. And so therefore all the people that are tied up. So that shows that we are putting in a ton of effort as an industry to meet these regulations.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. If so, for instance, like if you go to Quad OC, just the amount of workforce, the increase in workforce that you would need to meet it, like the talent in the Permian alone is questionable, right? So it's just a lot of things of how a lot of challenges ahead of that. And so that kind of leans into opening up to the advanced technologies, right? Like the EPA opening that opportunity for these technologies to get passed. So that's why we definitely are being optimistic that we think everything will move forward positively, because I think that the EPA probably sees that being a big challenge as well.
What are the implications if you don't meet the regulations, Maddie? Since you read the 1,600-page document, do you have those numbers off the top of your head?
So, I mean, we can open it up. If we're talking implications, are you talking more as far as like dollar signs and what that was? Okay, yeah. So what they're doing is they're going to be moving more so into like really understanding how much is being emitted. So they want to have more of an empirical number of what's coming out of all of these sites. And so what we're going to start seeing is that they're going to put equations on pretty much everything. So really getting into the thick of, how much is coming from each of these sites for each operator. And so they have kind of this, I guess it's a baseline, or your threshold is actually what it is. It's a threshold. And so it's 25,000 metric tons of CO2e that you have a threshold of. And that's across all basins. It doesn't, so that kind of
so is that
makes
for
it a
the
little
company
tricky.
or is it on a basin?
That's per operator.
Per
Yeah,
operator.
per operator.
Okay. Per year?
Per year.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you have this threshold that you can kind of get to, but anything over that, they're going to start adding this kind of tax or fee. It's kind of interchangeable when it comes to that. But for this year, for 2024, the reporting, what they're going to do is anything over that threshold is going to be $900 per metric ton. And so this is kind of where it gets a little tricky, but
I'm like trying to do the math in my head. I'm like,
yeah, it can get, I mean, if you look at just a leak rate of the super emitter event, if it's 100 kilograms per hour, and you have that leak duration of 5 days, I mean, that's a hefty amount. So that kind of moves into one of the other things that they're really adding in, and it's called measurement methods. So they have 5 different methods, and basically what they're going to do is they're going to ask you how long was it leaking, what was the leak rate, and do you know what the component was? So understanding all of that information. So they have the 5 different methods, and I think it's like the last 3 are kind of where it really starts to get a little bit dicey with the numbers, because you're having to do what they're calling, oh my gosh, I'm blanking on it.
Is it the AVO?
No, that's part of the Quado.
Oh, okay.
So it's the emission factors.
Oh,
sorry about that. Yeah,
okay.
so emission factors. So based on whatever they find is leaking, you'll have so much that you'll have to kind of put into an equation, and that gives you what your leak rate is. And then they're going to look at that leak rate or see what the leak is, and then put a duration. And that duration is basically going to be the last time that you were on site with an OGI camera, or having been on site to know that something was happening. So if it was biannually, that's close to 180 days that you would be having to go back to.
Supports the data log of the flights of the 30 days, right?
Yeah.
So that would be something that would trigger that.
Yes, absolutely. So again, that can become very, very big numbers very, very quickly. And so that's why we're working really hard to make sure that, one, we fit into the methods that are going to let you know when did it start, what's happening, and what the leak rate was. So that way we're not having to default and use these really high numbers, because a lot of it's going up like 200%.
And that's the emission factors. Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you to talk more about. Can you explain that a little bit, Maddie, of like how much the emission factors have changed?
Yes. Yeah. So they did some research. They've been doing studies, projects in other regions, and what they've come up with is actually looking at these emission factors. And so they've adjusted these equations, and those factors are going up anywhere from like 40 to close to 200 or 2,000%. It's insane amount of increase in some of these, because they saw that maybe this piece of equipment is leaking a little bit more, so we probably need to add some more factors to it. So it's extensive.
When does Quado C take effect?
So it's not so much when it takes effect. It's when. So what it's looking at is when you made changes to a site, essentially. So when it was constructed, finished construction, or any changes that were made. And so that's what's going to determine whether it's Quado B or Quado C. And with so much happening as far as making some of these sites more on the electric side, that's going to be considered basically like a change. And
so if you make some modifications, then it's
Thank you.
It's going to be part of B and C. So
yeah. And so really, when it comes to the regulations, when we're talking Quado B, Quado C, Quado A, all the Quados, all that's looking at is really what type of site is it, what kind of changes, when did you finish, and then it tells you how often you're supposed to be out there on site. And then that's when you'd mentioned OGI and AVO. So you have both of those options to be able to do your surveys. And so the surveys are done under subpart W, which I know a lot of operators are already very familiar with. But the subpart W tells you the reporting aspect. Quad O tells you how often. And then the other thing, which we were just talking about, was kind of the fee. That's the methane emission tax, or the isn't it the methane emission fee, MEF? One of those two.
we won't school you on it.
Yeah, and it's under the IRA. And so that tells you how much you have to put towards what you reported on. So it kind of pieces it all together.
Well, since you're a walking ChatGPT of emissions regulations.
Did you pick up on that?
Is there
oh no.
Is there anything?
Do you believe me now? Yeah.
Is there anything that people are not talking about that they should be in all of the new regulations that are coming down?
I mean, I think the one thing that, and so take into mind the reason we wanted to totally dive in. And so when Maddie moved to the Permian, I was like, look, Maddie, the best thing you could do is just eat this elephant of the regulations. And there she went and did it. And I mean, she obviously did a really good job. But I think the one thing when we did that, what we really wanted to understand was a super emitter. Because a super emitter was like, man, we really just are trying to wrap our heads around how is this super emitter going to work? And how's it going to, is it a fee? Is it a fine? Or is it going to roll into the methane charge? So do you want to chat about that one? What you learned? Because the super emitter fee, how that works, or the super emitter program.
Thanks, Jenny. And honestly, I do have to kind of give some of the credit back to Jenny, because I probably would never have thought that this would be such a big thing. But talking about regulations and being able to understand it from this aspect has just been so eye-opening, but also to help operators understand, because I think there are pieces, Jake, that not every operator is probably going to be looking at, and the super emitter is very much at the forefront of everybody's mind. It's such a big kind of beast a little bit, because I think there's quite a bit that goes into it. So really the super emitter, all that is we're going to have these third party, I don't want to say operators, but it's going to be third parties that are going and flying over. They'll have satellites,
and they're validated.
Yes, they do.
That they're validated by the EPA.
Yes,
right?
thank you. No, that's great to point out. So they do have to apply and be an approved third party. One thing they did change with this newer release was that they can't be on site. It has to be remote. So that means
they can still be standing. Like they can still be on the ground.
Yes.
They don't have to be aerial. They just can't be on location, right? Like on your location. So yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So no, that's great. Thank you for adding that in. But yes, so what they're going to be looking for is any leak event that's 100 kilograms per hour or larger. So that's what classifies that super emitter as 100 kilograms per hour leak rate. So once they have that, they'll send it to the EPA. The EPA is going to figure out who it is and then send that operator a notification. And then what the operator is going to do is look at their data, if they have it, which is again where a lot of this technology comes into play to helping.
Mm-hmm.
But they're going to look at their data. They're going to make sure that the coordinates given for the super emitter was within, I think it's a 50-kilometer radius, I believe. It's a pretty small radius that they're going to have to look at. And if they're within that, then they would have to kind of go out there, and that's where OGI comes into play. Or if they have continuous monitoring, they can use that information. And then if it's not, what they're able to do is say, this is our data, this is where our site's at, we don't fall into that radius, not us.
And so I'd like to add to that. Thank you for sharing that.
Of course.
We had a customer call us the other day, and they were notified by Bloomberg and said, hey, we saw a really large event that would have qualified for the super emitter program. Because it hasn't implemented, right? It's not in effect yet. And they were able to go and identify, just by evaluating their Sufi data, that it was not theirs. It was another neighbor or of someone. So they were able to quickly, and I mean, just think of the power in that. Like, they did not have to deploy resources.
Mm-hmm.
They were able to quickly just identify in their dashboard, hey, we can see a start and a stop, and that's not there. And so, yeah, sorry, Bloomberg, that's not going to happen. But it was a positive thing. And so for them, right, so they had sent them down the road. But that was one way that we see Sufi working the best for the super emitter program.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And just one more point. I'm sorry. I'm going to get into it. We start talking regulations and I'm like, oh my gosh, I do nerd out a little bit.
I can finally use all this knowledge.
I know. It's just been trapped in here.
You're just waiting for trivia where somebody it's like a
oh
my gosh,
Trivial Pursuit with emissions questions.
We
and
seriously have that?
Can we
I
have
know.
a game night with Maddie?
Digital Wildcatters.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. So quick little tidbit. So, oh my gosh, I just lost my train of thought.
Oh, it's okay. It'll come back to you.
No, okay, I found it. Okay, we're good. So with the super emitter, so one thing that they're going to ask is that you have kind of this due diligence, I want to say, but really it's a root cause analysis.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going out to site, figure out what it is that's leaking, and then that's where you're kind of putting into the measurement methods and the emission factors and all of that. But if, as it's written currently, the continuous monitoring, you'll be able to utilize that data and not have to go onto on site and do the OGI verification. So,
which again is a big deal because of the resources, right? You have to deploy that.
Yeah, the operations piece. Absolutely.
So, with that, can we tell you about our new Sufi that's coming?
Yeah. What's the difference with the new Sufi?
Okay, so our new Sufi, I'll tell you this. I'll tell you a little bit about our current Sufi, and then I'm going to let Maddie tell you about our new Sufi because we already decided she's going to get to share the new fun things. And then I'll tell you about our Aura camera. So our current Sufi does all the things we discussed earlier, right? So we have over 8,000 in the field right now. They're working just perfectly fine. But because we deployed these, ChampionX has done a really good job of hearing their customers. And like I was saying earlier, like us being in a startup environment, we had the voice of our customers to say, hey, this would help us in our operations. This would help us in our workflow, or this would make things better. And what we heard back was a few things on our hardware and then a few things on probability and attribution. And so with that, if you want to kind of talk about our hardware.
Yeah, absolutely. So the changes happening are actually going to be pretty aesthetic. I will talk about that first. So we're going to see a little bit of a change as far as what the Sufi looks like.
So it's prettier.
It's much prettier.
It is,
and it's
very neat. Yeah, it's pretty fancy.
And it's much smaller.
Yes.
Okay.
So
yeah. So we've changed it to where it's more of like a single. I don't know how to really explain that.
The biggest thing is that it doesn't have a fan.
Okay.
I mean, to me, that was kind of like the biggest aha, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Okay. Yeah.
So, and I mean, if you've seen our branding, Emissions ChampionX has gone bananas with yellow. So our Aura camera is yellow, our Halo is yellow, now our Sufi's yellow. So we rebranded everything. But it's also just really rugged.
Yeah.
I mean, our whole thing is rugged and reliable. Our current Sufi has been rugged and reliable, but our new one is even more rugged and reliable. Didn't know we could get there with it, but here we are.
Yeah.
And it's fanless. And so the current version, we have a fan that pulls in, and we have our metal oxide sensor on the interior. And what we need is that fan. We've needed the fan to pull the gas and to get that to the oxide sensor, metal oxide sensor. Well, what we learned is it pulled way too much of the battery. So power pull was too much. And so we are able to get a smaller footprint, a smaller solar panel by eliminating the fan, and also water intrusion. So we were able to eliminate water intrusion because we did have a little bit of water intrusion in some of our older versions. We have modified with our current versions, but with some of our old generations that we had out, because we started installing these in about 2019. We did see some issues with water getting in, like to our snorkels and things.
Yeah.
And so that would be water intrusion is one. You're not going to get water in this. You don't have to touch it, or you can't work on it in the field.
Yeah.
So, all right, go ahead. I was giving you a minute to pause on the pretty. There you go.
Yeah, thanks. No, thanks, Jenny. No, and so it is going to be kind of that single modular infrastructure for the Sufi itself. On the underside, you're going to have that metal oxide sensor. We have places to do H2S and CO. And then one other thing to note is with our metal oxide, we also are able to do TVOCs. So
they all come that way.
Yes. Yeah. So all of those are options for what we get to read for you guys. And then let's see, we had the fan. Jenny covered that, which is great. It's a really, really big change for us. We have the smaller solar panel. We have a single bracket kind of install. So the installation piece is so easy. It kind of comes all together when we ship it. And then all you really have to do is put it on the pole and then clip the solar panel to whichever angle you want. We have multi-angle solar panels for that, just to make sure that you're getting the best coverage for wherever you are. Trying to think what else we have. Internally, we are going to have the accelerometer. So that lets us know, if it gets backed over, if it gets moved or tilts, whatever happens, it's going to let us know that something has happened to that Sufi. Because we've seen, unfortunately, in the field, they do get backed over. Just because construction, it can be anything.
We've actually had them just disappear.
Yes, that happens too. And so with that,
not a lot, but yeah.
Yeah, and thankfully we added the GNSS or the GPS system in that too. So that's going to help with our triangulation piece. So whenever it comes to the actual readings and getting that good plume, it's going to help with that. But it's also going to let us know that anytime that gets moved or whenever we're on site, it just has that exact reading for where it's at. So,
and to add to that, which we don't deal with this at all in the Permian, but we've heard in places like Canada, you get so much snow and it just covers it essentially, but you'll know it's still there from that as well. So I wanted to add that because I remember.
That's a great one. I haven't heard about that
Tell me about this Aura camera.
Oh, you want to hear about the Aura?
I want to hear about the Aura camera.
Okay. All right. So Aura. Okay. Listen. We created the best camera on the market. I don't know how to say it any other way. Yeah. And when I say we, I love y'all's enthusiasm.
Nobody's as enthusiastic about this kind of stuff as
we love our company. We love our products.
We love our products. And I'll say our team is, I will also say, we have a really fun team.
Who's watching this? Is your boss watching this?
Probably.
Probably, well, yeah.
But we weren't endorsed, I promise.
We promise, yes. But I will say every time, I think we are both a couple of nerds, because every time we go on a demo, you're going to second that. Yeah, we're a couple of nerds. Every time we go on a demo, we learn more about our tech. You know what I mean? And it's just like, wow, these new things, right? So our Aura camera. So David Furry, he's been in the industry for about 20 years, and he is the company that I was mentioning, LSI, that we acquired in 2022.
Okay.
So he actually invented the original OGI camera.
Okay.
And when we purchased him, he was like, okay, my wish before I retire will be to build this camera. And here it goes, right? Off into the back room to build the camera. I'm giving you the dramatics of it. And so him and our team of engineers all got together and developed this camera that, when I take to customers and give a demo, they literally are just like, wow, I think you might have over-engineered this. You might have overdid this thing. It's so cool. We actually ran over it with a truck and it didn't break it. It's just perfect. So the camera is your OGI. We put a Ventus core in it. It's a cooled core. It's about 6 pounds. It's just really rugged. But the thing that makes it so cool, and these are going to be my not so technical terms, is it's like a Roomba for a camera. So it has that inertia movement in it. I think I'm saying that correctly, inside the camera, where we have a routing capability. We have this is my camera.
The camera moves?
No. It has the technology in which, how the Roomba it will map itself and then it will go back. Do you have a Roomba?
I don't.
Okay. Well, if it maps itself, like it can go back and it will learn its route or get a smarter route. So we have those type of technology capabilities with it. So I can go out and essentially say I'm a senior technician. I can go out and set up a route, and I'm essentially going out and just tagging different things. And then a person can come behind me and use the same route, not even the same camera, the same route and do the same
path.
Yeah, the same path. And so that in a sense is a little bit like a video game. So that piece has been really awesome because currently what people are doing and everywhere they're doing it either through they're doing it digitally through a software, or they're having to do it via writing. So
who writes these days?
Yeah, nobody does that anymore.
2024.
Minus the LDAR text. They have to do it a lot.
Yeah. So they go back, they essentially go back to their shop. They have to spend hours upon hours of doing editing of their imagery and then writing notes of where they were. And it's just based on this 4 hour, say you're out in the field doing 4 hour surveys and you got to come back and do your editing. Well, we've eliminated that additional 4 hours by having the routing and targeting capability in the camera.
Okay.
So you just send it to the cloud and it's good to go. And we didn't want to be essentially a software compliance for like your LDAR program. So we have open API for that. Everything we have, we can push to a different platform if you want it. So is there something I'm leaving out? I feel like I'm leaving something out on my Aura.
Well, we should probably talk about resolution.
Oh, yes.
Resolution is a
Go for that.
huge one. Yeah. So we're 4 times the resolution of any camera on the market right now. So we've
humble brag.
Yeah. I mean, we're so humble about our camera.
Yeah, we could probably work on that.
Yeah.
But
yeah. 4 times the resolution. And let me think. I think that's pretty much it. I mean, that's kind of got some good wow factor, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess one thing to add, because I mean, it's all spot on, but a lot of the team that's behind this were operators or have worked in this space for a long time. And so they understood kind of the pain points that a lot of these LDAR techs and these operators are having every day, having to do their LDAR surveys or their Quad-O or subpart, whatever it may be. They kind of knew the pain points. And so what they really tried to do with this camera is take those away. And then with the kind of the data aspect or the software aspect, it's been, whenever they see something or we hear something from an operator.
That reminds me, Appendix K. So Appendix K is a very complex reporting. And so you have to, it's your dwell time. Like you have to stand there for like 10 seconds. Yeah. So the camera will actually, when you walk up, it will tell you, okay, you can hold the button down. And it'll tell you, okay, you've been here 10 seconds, move on. And inside your routing and targeting capabilities, you can like select what it was. And then it can say, okay, this is yes, a leak, no, a leak, and move on. And so that's one thing that it was built for that in mind. But we don't want people to think it was only built for that because Appendix K can be very complex. Like you have to hit a lot of different things. And for operators, so you can go out and say you're just, hitting just your tanks. We can set up a route that way as well. So, and I'm trying to think.
Mind's blown.
The other thing is, let me see. Yeah, I mean, I think we hit it, right? I think we did a great job. We slam dunked Aura.
Another humble brag there. Just pat yourself on the back.
The Aura is great, but I mean, let's talk about how we sold it.
Yeah, we're pretty awesome.
No, just kidding. So, just trying to make sure we check off all the things here in our suite of solutions, right?
Well, I know we have to get y'all out of here by a certain time. Ladies, this has been awesome. I feel schooled up. Now I know that Maddie knows every single regulation known to man. If I have questions, I'm just going to hit you up. This has been awesome. Thanks for coming to Houston.
Yes, thanks for having us,
thanks
Jake.
so much,
This was
Jake.
so
This
great.
has been great.
If anybody wants to find more information about the products, reach out to you guys, where do they go?
Well, I mean, I guess honestly, you could email us. Our information will be provided. If you connect with either one of us, we can get connected in the Permian, or you can just come to our website. There's a contact form on the ChampionX emissions area and just submit into our contact.
Love it. Go reach out to them, leave a rating, review, like, subscribe. Catch you guys in the next episode.